Hello, Asha. Can you hear me?
Yes, good afternoon. I can hear you.
All right. Good afternoon. How's your week been?
Hello?
All right. I said, how's your week been?
Oh, it's doing well. It's good.
All right. So let's just wait for a few minutes for other folks to join us. Otherwise, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and ask me.
Mm,
I think we had
mm,
we had a take-home project from last week. Did you get to finish that?
Um, well, I was actually,
Sorry?
I wasn't really sure. I wasn't really sure how you were supposed to do. I was struggling on it a bit.
Okay. We'll take a look at it shortly before we move on to the next thing that we've got to work on. 1 second. So today we'll talk about APIs. We've had a bit of conversation around APIs, but we'll continue talking about them and see.
So we won't be working on our weather app today.
Well, so it's still the same app, all right?
Okay.
We're just building one step upon the other. Okay, so let me share my screen. So as you can see, we worked on the flags last week, right?
Yeah.
But remember, we got that data via an API. Okay?
Okay.
We didn't need to rewrite all of the logic to create the flags, to create the codes. We used an API to simplify the task we had at hand. Now, for us to be able to work with holidays as well, there are a few ways to do that. We can create some kind of screen, and every other month or so, or at the beginning of the year, put in all the data we think we'll need. But how about if our participants or whoever is using our dashboard is from another province? Let's start with that, right?
Yeah.
It becomes a lot more cumbersome to maintain that data and to have it displayed to us when we need it. All right. How
Yep.
about we're looking at weather information? It won't be a smart idea for us to daily go ahead and start to maintain the weather information in our database, right? If someone already has that responsibility, or if someone already provides that service, we might fare better if we go ahead to grab the information from such an organization that already has the information available to us. isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the simplest way to get such data is through APIs, right? It enables us to get what we need in a defined format, right? And from a trusted site, rather than us going ahead to go manually fetch the data every single time. One second, please.
Mm.
So that's why we need APIs. They make it easy for us to get the data we need, right? Now we could build it in such a way that we have some form of trigger, right? That goes ahead to fetch our data and populates everything we require into our application. And then we go ahead to use that information. So that's why we need APIs, really. They just simplify the things we have to work on and help us do it faster and better. All right, I'm trying to pause for a few folks to come in. But if I still don't see them in a few minutes, I'll go ahead and proceed. But anyhow, I was asking earlier about the second project. Yes, go ahead, please. I don't.
Did we add a second flag?
Yeah, that's why I said think about it.
Let's say did we add a second flag?
You think about it and tell me what we did.
We added a second flag.
Still a question.
So we added a second flag.
Second flag, you're supposed to add 3 more.
Sorry,
Yes. Asha, are you back?
on the arbitrary text the playground then. Is it in the playground?
Yes.
I thought we said that it worked last time. I think it wasn't working, like it was showing error.
Asha, when you're back, let me know if you're back. That is.
So we're supposed to have 5 in the end. Right?
So you didn't do it.
Yeah. We done.
Asha, are you back? Let's just wait a little bit further for Asha. Asha, are you back? That's taking some time. That's it, just to be sure. Okay. All right. So we've just been waiting for you, really. So I'm not sure if the other folks are joining us today, so we probably would want to proceed. We might go over this again in the next class. So the first thing we'll do, anyhow, is we're going to watch a video. All right. And pay attention to the content of the video. If you have questions, you can ask after the video's done. And let's see if this gives us more clarity about an API does and how to use it. All right. Can you guys see the screen? All right, let me know if you heard the sound too.
When you hang around programmers, you might have heard about APIs and how they can be used to perform certain tasks or retrieve some data. But what are these exactly and why were they created? Let me explain the problem with a simple, non-IT related example. When you go to a restaurant and order some food, you interact with the waiter. You can order food and drinks, ask questions about the menu, request and pay the bill, and much more. In this example, the waiter is shielding you from all the complicated stuff that happens behind the scenes. You don't have to worry about stoves, ovens, dishes, managing stock, or pouring drinks. He is the interface between you and all of the services that a restaurant offers, giving you a way to interact with the restaurant while still shielding you from all the complexity behind the scenes. In a way, the waiter can be seen as the API of the restaurant, and through this example, you intuitively understand why they are useful. The term API stands for Application Programmable Interface, and it's a way for different programs to work together in various ways. There are many types of APIs and reasons why they are used. I'll highlight 4 of them in this video. For starters, APIs can be used to get access to data from third parties. In the restaurant example, the waiter can give you information on the status of your order without you having to go to the kitchen yourself. Another example would be the weather app on your phone. Google or Apple have not gone out and put temperature sensors all over the world. No, instead, these apps use the API of a third party to retrieve weather predictions. Apple, for instance, is using the API of the Weather Channel. APIs allow different apps and services to exchange information. These days, it's hard to find a service that doesn't have an API. There are APIs to look up recipes, lyrics, information on barcodes, zip codes, available parking spaces, public holidays, and so on and so on. But aside from just accessing data, APIs can also be used to hide complexity and perform tasks. In the restaurant example, you don't need to know how to prepare a perfect roll of sushi. You just order one. Another example would be the operating systems on our computers and phones. App developers don't have to worry about setting up a Wi-Fi connection, drawing shapes onto the screen to make a beautiful user interface, or how to talk to the various sensors like the accelerometer or GPS. No, instead, the operating system gives developers a bunch of APIs that simplify all of this. If an app wants to show a button on the screen, it just asks the system to render one. The app doesn't have to worry about what device it is running on, what hardware it has, screen resolution, or anything like that. It makes developers more efficient because they can focus on what matters to them. But aside from accessing data and abstracting complexity, APIs can also be used to extend functionality. For instance, on iOS, applications can show a widget in the notification center. And to do that, the app notifies the system through an API that it has a widget available. If the user now adds this widget to their notification center, the system will contact the app and ask how it should display the widget. Another example is Siri, Google Assistant, or Alexa. These personal assistants are quite clever, but external developers can use the assistant's API to extend the functionalities even further. My Google Home, for instance, didn't know how to turn my smart outlets on or off, but that changed when the vendor integrated with the Google Assistant through its API. Suddenly, Google became aware of the new hardware, its capabilities, and how to interact with it. You might not realize it, but APIs are all around us. You've probably seen messages like these, your phone asking for permission to use your location or microphone. And that brings us to the final use case. APIs can be used as gatekeepers. For instance, on mobile platforms, the system only has a handful of APIs that can be used to get your location. And because it's centralized in the system, it's really easy for iOS or Android to notify you when an app is using your location. So it's not the app that is being nice and asks your permission first. No, it's the system that does it for them. There is no way around it. What's more, the system also gives the ability to revoke this permission at a later time, should you change your mind. So every time your phone asks for your permission, you know that an app is using an API of the system, and one that is privacy sensitive. And while this is great, there is an issue with this. Usually permission is only asked once. You might have used your Google or Facebook account to log into another website or app. It's easy, fast, and convenient. But by doing that, we also give the website or app the permission to access some of our data, like our name or email address. This is great because it puts us in control of our personal data. If you don't want to share it, you just deny it. However, the problem here is that sometimes these permissions are long-lasting, and after a while, we forget what apps or websites we gave permission to access our data. This is what allowed Cambridge Analytica to collect massive amounts of data through the Facebook API. They created a personality quiz that asked for permission to get some of your personal data. However, if you gave it permission, the app could silently access your data for months, even if you didn't use it anymore. Instead, you had to revoke the permission through the Facebook website. So in short, APIs can act as gatekeepers, protecting our personal data and only giving it out to the apps that we choose. But we should be aware about how long these permissions last and revoke them when we no longer use an app. So, time for a conclusion. APIs are all around us. They are used to get access to data so that multiple apps or services can work together. They can also hide complexity for developers, allowing them to not waste time on figuring out how GPS works, for instance. APIs can also be used to extend functionality of existing systems, and finally, they can act as gatekeepers to protect our personal data. I hope this video brought some clarity to a topic that is mostly discussed among developers. Let me know your thoughts or questions in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.
All right, so who learned anything from that? Who learned something from that? Can you share? Did you learn anything? Can't be silent. Now 6 long minutes. What's a third-party app? Okay, that's a good question. A third-party app is just any other app that your own app is communicating with. That's what a third-party app is. Okay, so give an example of an API that was used in the video. Any example? APIs can be used on your devices when an app asks for your permission for a location or something. Yeah, so really, in many of the apps that we use every day, the NE that connects Apple Weather app to the place they get their information. So a lot of our applications use tons and tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of APIs. Almost every application you use on the web will have some form of API that they're connecting to. YouTube has several APIs that is connected to. So there were 4 points that was mentioned what you can use API for. Can anyone remember them? That was a repetition. It was actually mentioned from the beginning. 4 points about what you can use APIs for. So these are the 4. Can be used to access data. It can be used to hide complexity. It can be used to extend functionality. It can be used to implement security. The at least 4 basic uses of APIs. So can tell me what's the meaning of API?
What it stands for?
Yeah. What does API stand for?
Something programming interface.
Application program. Sometimes it's called programmable or programming interface. All right, so application programming or programmable interface. That's what APIs are. All right, so as I said, there are several APIs all over the web. Okay, a lot, tons and tons. But how many of us remember this API? How many of us remember this API?
Not sure.
We use it when we're building Tonkable.
So you're not sharing.
Well, I'm not sharing my screen. Let's see. How many of us remember this API?
I think. Oh, is that the one we got the dog images and you were making like a dog Tinder?
Yes. Asha, do you remember this API? So the idea we're trying to work on here is for you to see that there are tons and tons and tons and tons of APIs all over the web. They're just uncountable. You can get weather API, you can get dog API, you can get flag API, you can get payment API, you can get lyrics API, you can get recipe API. You can get holiday APIs, you can get hotel APIs. You can get school APIs, you can get course APIs. Right? They're just loads and loads and loads of APIs that you can use. Now, most of the time when you call an API, who knows what data type comes back to you? What's the data type that comes back to you? What's it called? There's a clue, but if you guys can catch it. I'm showing you a clue right now.
On your screen?
Well, I'm showing you a clue. What data type comes back from most APIs? Any guesses?
Open source?
No. What's the meaning of open source? Hmm? So Asha, do you know what open source is? No. Okay. So open source is any kind of program that the developer made the source code publicly available. All right. So, for example, this person, when he built this site, see, the code for that site is publicly available here. If you go to source, you will see all the codes he used. You can see it in there. That's why it is called open source. But that's not what I was asking for. That was a good... What's the opposite of open source? Anyone? So Asha says, why will they put their codes there? Because they want other people to learn from it or to use it and improve on it. So I said, what's the opposite of open source? Yes, that's it. Closed source. So back to my original question. Yeah, closed source. Yeah, that's correct. Back to my original question. For most APIs, what kind of data do you get back? All right, so once again, it's on screen. The kind of data you get back is on screen, and I've said it several times in the past. Pictures. Well, in this case, you are getting pictures back, okay? But the pictures is represented in a certain way. It's staring at you on the screen. It's JSON data. It's right there on screen, JSON. No, I don't. It's staring at you. Asha, can you see where JSON data is? Yep, that's it, JSON. So what is JSON data? JSON simply means Java script object notation. Complex, but it just means when I'm sending you back data, I send it in the format similar to this, where I have a curly bracket starting, a curly bracket ending, and then each have different tags. All right, so the message tag is a picture. The status tag is success. All right, that is how this API returns its own data. There are several other kinds of APIs. They all return data in similar formats, but the structure will be different. So remember, this is Dog API, right? Dog CEO. If we go to another API, the Dog API, Dog as a service. All right, I think this one requires you to, to pay for something.
It has a free one.
Yeah, I know. I know I have an account somewhere here. I'm trying to see if I can get the. So let me show us some things about APIs. Okay. Now what I need is network. So if I refresh this page, you can see there are several things showing up in this window I probably haven't seen before or are wondering what's all this. So let's get the ones that are APIs calls. All right, so for example, you can see this one. If you go look at the response, you can see the data that it brings back is similar to what we had previously. If you go to breeds, the data is similar. So let's copy this data. Okay, let's copy this data. So remember, as I said, this is like a sort of introduction once again to JSON data. So I'm taking this data to something called a JSON formatter. And now what that API returned is now this. Okay. What the API returned? It returned the weight of a certain item, the height of a certain item, both the imperial and metric measurements, returned an ID for that item, and then there is a name for that. The breed, what it's bred for, the breed group, lifespan, temperaments, origin, image, And then you can see from here, if I close this, you see that's 1 item. If I close this, that's 2. Now you can see repeats. Repeats. Yes, I'm already using I pasted it here and it beautified immediately on the right.
It's still pretty messy and confusing. I prefer things like literally like almost look like a textbook. It's easier.
So I'm the only one who can hear you. All right. But you need to use your mic. But the point is, it takes us from this very complex, unfriendly format to something that is more formatted. So you can copy it out. You can copy one single node out. Yeah, I know it looks a bit complicated right now, but if you step through, right, you would see that not so much. Okay, so now I copied 1 out. If you look at this is not too complicated, is it? Now, this has multiple JSONs inside one JSON. You can see there's a JSON here, and then there is width that has its own JSON data. There is height that has its own JSON data. ID is just the value. Name is just the value. Bred for is just the value. Breed group, just the value. Lifespan, temperament, just the value. Image has its own nested JSON data as well. So you can have JSON data nested inside JSON data. Okay, but ultimately, it's just what you call a name value pair. A name, weight, value, JSON, okay? And then imperial, name, value, JSON. Metric, name, value, JSON. Hi, Alex.
Hi.
Yeah, I see. You just joined us. You had
What are
soccer
we
again today?
doing?
Sorry?
What are we doing?
We're talking about APIs. So, one of the folks who had been in class much earlier, how about Michael?
Oh, he's not here right now.
Okay, so did you have soccer again today?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Let's just see how much you can catch up or you can catch up with.
Okay.
So who wants to explain an API? Anyone? Asha, Femi. Anyone wants to explain what an API is? You're not using your mic, Femi. It's better you verbalize it.
An API is something that's used an API is something that can be used to collect data. It's basically like having an extra help to collect the data or show messages or receive information for customers using a certain app. It makes it so the people who made the app itself don't really have to do all these things by themselves.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
So an example from the video we watched, all right, is if you go to a restaurant and you order your food, right? In a few minutes, the food comes to you, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, but there is so much work that is done in the kitchen to get the food prepared, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true.
So, yeah, now you really don't know what they've done in the kitchen, okay? You just tell the waiter, this is what I want. The waiter goes, comes back again, and you have your food ready to eat. The waiter is like the API. It's like a messenger that you say, go get me something. It goes, It helps you, shields you from all the complex things that might happen for your food to be ready. Do you get it now?
Yeah, I get it.
So remember, the other class, we actually used an API in our previous class, which was the flag API. Can you remember that?
I wasn't here.
Okay. So we used an API in that class to grab our flags. So the flag API gives us flags. And I said to the class that there are hundreds and thousands of APIs. So we're looking at another one called the dog API just before you joined us. All right. The dog API gives you a random picture of a dog. Okay. This is the API address. When you click on fetch, it gives you a random data called, that I said to them is called JSON data. Okay, so a message that, I can't hear you from. Well, it's useful for different purposes. Let's leave that for now. Okay. So the person could be practicing how to build an API. So this person built a dog API that when you click on fetch, it just gives you a random picture of a dog, just like what we did for the flag. And I was describing to you that most APIs send you back data in a format called JSON data, JavaScript object notation. All right. That is what JSON data is. So that was what I was showing them here. This is JSON data from another API. All right. The reason I'm going through this is we'll be using a few APIs, and it will be useful for us to understand what kind of data we get back. So you can see here, there is an ID, there is a name for the dog.
Can
There
you
is a
please
type.
help me with the flag API?
Say that again.
Can you please help me with the flag API?
All right. Well, what I can do, right, is as in you're talking about that project.
The flag API.
Yes, I'm
also
saying.
having a problem with it. I made 5 flags, but like I think something went wrong. Maybe I accidentally touched something last week because my project, I had the API working last week, and this week the text box isn't doing anything.
Okay, so let's hold on. Okay, let's not model this up. Alex, when you said you want me to help you with a flag API, which part do you want us to go over that project again? Is that what you're asking, or do you want a video to the class, or do you want the link to the API?
Is the API just what we were doing before?
So we used the API, all right, in the last class. And the address for the API was flagsapi.com. All right. And this is how you get a flag. You just need to change this code. All right. So,
Oh, this was the API.
yeah, this is an API. Okay. That's why I said there are different kinds of APIs, tons of them. We just went from that to dog API. Okay. There are weather APIs. There are holiday APIs. There are lyrics APIs. There are recipe APIs. They're just all sorts of APIs all over the place, but they all do similar things. They allow you get some data from somewhere else so that you can use them in your own app. All right. You know, if we try to build something that generates all the flags of every country by ourselves, that will take us a long time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So
Are we
someone
doing
has
any new APIs?
we're still going to go to some new APIs, but I want us to have a kind of introduction to how to use APIs, how to understand the data you get back from an API. That's why I'm doing this long talk, because once we switch to using the next APIs, we need to be able to interpret the responses that we get back by ourselves. Do you get it now? Alex, do you understand that?
What?
All right, cool. So that's why I'm telling us that the APIs is what we usually call value ID value pair, okay, or name value pair. You can see we see name, and this is the name. This is the lifespan, and this is the value of the lifespan. This is the temperament of the dog, and this is the temperament label, and this is the temperament value.
What's
Right.
a temperament?
Say that again.
What is a temperament?
Temperament, how they behave. So you can see temperament, it says steady, bold, independent, confident, intelligent, and proud. So this breed, Anatolian Shepherd dogs, are steady, bold, independent, confident, intelligent, and proud. Right? We had a very long list. I just pulled out one. So for example, who knows the temperament of any kind of dog? Can you tell me a particular breed of dog that you know the temperaments? And let's see if it matches the data we got back. Anyone?
Doberman, the ones that they generally use for police dogs are generally, since they're trained to be hunting dogs, they're naturally they're very intelligent, and they're very able, alert, and kind of slightly aggressive depending on how they're trained.
All right, so let's look at our API here. Results. Name, Doberman Pinschers, bred for guardian, breed group walking, lifespan 10 years, temperament, fearless, energetic, alert, loyal, obedient, confident, and intelligent. So Alex, do you understand that now? Do you understand what temperament is now?
Yeah. After
Yeah.
class, can you send me the link for this recording so I know what happened before I came?
Sure, I'll do that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what we're just doing today, right, was just to go through these APIs. And all of that is because we're going to start using something called Canadian Holiday APIs. Why do we need that? Remember this portion of our screen. Below the dates and time, we need to display a few holidays, upcoming holidays on our dashboard. All right. So how might we be able to do that without having to enter the data ourselves again and again? Okay. All right. So Asha, I see you're looking at the Huskies and stuff like that from the API. We'll take a look at that just towards the end of class because we're almost out of time. Okay. So we need the API, and we'll be using the Canadian Holiday API. All right, we'll be using that to get some data that will now be pulling into our app and displaying on the dashboard. That's why we're going through this process. So let me give a few minutes for questions. Can you use your mic?
We're still going back to the bubble so we can fix our apps, the APIs.
Okay, let me permit you to share screen. Let me see what's broken.
You disabled.
can try now.